Jai Srila Prabhupada. So we'd like to welcome everyone to our 1-hour reading of Krishna book to Srila Prabhupada. And as we always do, let us offer our respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Nama Om Vishnuvedaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti-Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesha Sunyavari Paskachadesha Charane. And to each other, Panchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So for all of you online, you can follow the English subtitles at the bottom of the page. This will help you to follow along. And we are still in the prayers by the personified Vedas. What chapter is it? Anybody know what? Chapter 87, and we're somewhat near the end of the chapter. In this connection, the example of the rainy season is very appropriate. Seasonal rainfall may be taken as the agent for creation because after the rainfall, the wet fields are favorable for growing different types of vegetation. Similarly, as soon as there is creation by the Lord's glancing over the material nature, immediately the living entities spring up in their different living conditions, just as different types of vegetation grow after a rainfall. The rainfall is one, but the creation of the different plants is varied. The rain falls equally on the whole field, but the different plants sprout up in different shapes and forms according to the seeds planted. Similarly, the seeds of our desires are varied. Every living entity has a different type of desire, and that desire is the seed which causes his growth in a certain type of body. This is explained by Rupa Goswami by the word papa bija. Papa or pap means sinful. All our material desires are to be taken as pap bija, or the seeds of sinful desires. The Bhagavad-Gita explains that our sinful desire is that we do not surrender unto the Supreme Lord. The Lord therefore says in the Bhagavad-Gita, I shall give you protection from the reactions of sinful desires. These sinful desires are manifested in different types of bodies. Therefore, no one can accuse the Supreme Lord of partiality in giving one type of body to a certain type of living entity and another type of body to another living entity. All the bodies of the 8,400,000 species of life are created according to the mental condition of the individual living entities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Purushottam, only gives them a chance to act according to their desires. Therefore, the living entities act by taking advantage of the facility given by the Lord.
At the same time, the living entities are born from the transcendental body of the Lord. This relationship between the Lord and the living entities is explained in the Vedic literature, wherein it is said that the Supreme Lord maintains all his children, giving them whatever they want. Similarly, in the Bhagavad-Gita, the Lord says, I am the seed-giving Father of all living entities. It is very simple to understand that the Father gives birth to the children, but the children act according to their own desires. Therefore, the father is never responsible for the different futures of his children. Each child can take advantage of the father's property and instructions, but even though the inheritance and instructions may be the same for all children, out of their different desires, each child creates a different life and thereby suffers or enjoys.
Similarly, the Bhagavad Gita's instructions are equal for everyone. Everyone should surrender unto the Supreme Lord, and He will take charge of one and protect one from sinful reactions. The facilities of living in the creation of the Lord are equally offered to all living entities. Whatever there is, either on the land, in the water, or in the sky, is equally given to all living entities. Since all living beings are sons of the Supreme Lord, everyone can enjoy the material facilities given by the Lord. But unfortunate living entities create unfavorable conditions of life by fighting among themselves. The responsibility for this fighting and creating favorable and unfavorable situations lies with the living entities, not with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, if the living entities take advantage of the Lord's instructions as given in the Bhagavad Gita and develop Krishna consciousness, then their lives become sublime and they can go back to Godhead.
One may argue that because this material world is created by the Lord, He is therefore responsible for its condition. Certainly, He is indirectly responsible for the creation and maintenance of this material world, but He is never responsible for the different conditions of living entities. The Lord's creation of this material world is compared to a cloud's creation of vegetation. In the rainy season, the cloud creates different varieties of vegetation. The cloud pours water on the surface of the earth, but it never touches the earth directly. Similarly, Lord, the Lord creates this material world simply by glancing over the material energy. This is confirmed in the Vedas. He threw his glance over the material nature, and thus there was creation. In the Bhagavad-Gita, it is also confirmed that simply by his transcendental glance over the material nature, he creates different varieties of entities, both movable and immovable, living and dead. The creation of the material world can therefore be taken as one of the pastimes of the Lord. It is called one of the Lord's pastimes because He creates this material world whenever He desires. This desire of Supreme Personal Godhead is also extreme mercy on His part because it gives the conditioned souls another chance to develop their original consciousness and thus go back to Godhead. Therefore, no one can blame the Supreme Lord for creating this material world.
Thank you. From the subject matter under discussion, we can gain a clear understanding of the difference between the impersonalists and the personalists. The impersonal conception recommends merging into the existence of the Supreme, and the widest philosophy recommends making all material varieties void. Both these philosophies are known as Mayavad. Certainly, the cosmic manifestation comes to a close and becomes void when the living entities merge into the body of Narayana to rest until another creation, and this may be called an impersonal condition. But these conditions are never eternal. The cessation of the Haribol 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 varieg of the variegatedness variegatedness of the material world and the merging of the living entities into the body of the Supreme are not permanent, because the creation will take place again. And the living entities who merged into the body of the Supreme without having developed their Krishna consciousness will again appear in this material world when there is another creation. The Bhagavad Gita confirms the fact that this material world is created and annihilated perpetually, and that conditioned souls without Krishna consciousness come back again and again whenever the material creation is manifest. If such conditioned souls take advantage of this opportunity and develop Krishna consciousness under the direct instruction of the Lord, then they are transferred to the spiritual world and do not have to come back to the material creation. It is said, therefore, that the Vaidists and the impersonalists are not very intelligent, because they do not take shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord. Because they are less intelligent, these voidists and impersonalists take two different types of austerities, either to attain the stage of nirvana, which means finishing the material conditions of life, or to attain oneness by merging into the body of the Lord. All of them again fall down because they neglect the lotus feet of the Lord.
Yes.
You carry on.
In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the author, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, after studying all the Vedic literatures and hearing from all authorities, has given his opinion that Krishna is the only supreme master and that all living entities are his eternal servants. His statement is confirmed in the prayers by the personified Vedas. The conclusion is, therefore, that everyone is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everyone is serving under the supreme direction of the Lord, and everyone is afraid of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is out of fear of him that activities are rightly executed. Everyone's position is to be subordinate to the Supreme Lord, yet the Lord has no partiality in his view of the living entities. He is just like the unlimited sky. As the sparks of a fire dance in the fire, similarly, all living entities are like birds flying in the unlimited sky of the Supreme Lord. Some of them are flying very high, some are flying at a lower altitude, and some are flying at a still lower altitude. The different birds are flying in different positions according to their respective abilities, but the sky has nothing to do with this ability. In the Bhagavad-Gita, the Lord confirms that he awards different positions to different living entities in proportion to their surrender. This proportionate reward by the personality of Godhead to the living entities is not partiality. Therefore, in spite of the living entities always being under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in their different positions, spheres, and species of life, he is never responsible for their different living conditions. It is foolish and artificial, therefore, to think oneself equal to the Supreme Lord, and it is still more foolish to think that one has not seen God. Everyone has seen God according to his capacity. The only difference is that the theist sees God as the Supreme Personality, the most beloved, Krishna, and the atheist sees the absolute truth as ultimate death.
The personified Vedas continues to pray. Dear Lord, they said, from all Vedic information, it is understood that you are the supreme controller and all living entities are controlled. Both the Lord and the living entities are called Nitya, eternal, and so are qualitatively one. Yet, the singular Nitya or the Supreme Lord is the controller, whereas the plural Nityas are controlled. The individual controlled living entity resides within the body, and the Supreme Controller, as Supersoul, is also present there. But the Supersoul controls the individual soul. That is the verdict of the Vedas. If the individual soul were not controlled by the Supersoul, then how could one explain the Vedic version that a living entity transmigrates from one body to another and enjoys or suffers the effects of his past deeds, sometimes being promoted to a higher standard of life and sometimes being degraded to a lower standard? Thus, the conditioned souls are not only under the control of the Supreme Lord, but are also conditioned by the control of the material nature. This relationship of the living entities with the Supreme Lord as the controlled and the controller definitely proves that although the supersoul is all pervasive, the individual soul, living entities are never all pervasive. If the individual soul were all pervasive, there would be no question of their being controlled. The theory that the supersoul and the individual soul are equal to, therefore, a polluted conclusion, and no sensible person accepts it. Rather, one should try to understand the distinction between the supreme eternal and the subordinate eternals.
The personified Vedas therefore concluded, O Lord, you are the unlimited eternal Dhruva, and the living entities are the limited eternals. The form of the unlimited eternal is sometimes conceived as the universal form, and in the Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, the form of the limited eternal is vividly described. It is said therein that the original spiritual form of the living entity is one 10,000 the size of the tip of a hair. It is also stated that spirit is greater than the greatest and smaller than the smallest. The individual living entities who are eternally part and parcel of God are smaller than the smallest. With our material senses, we can perceive neither the supreme who is greater than the greatest, nor the individual soul, who is smaller than the smallest. From the authoritative sources of Vedic literature, we have to understand both him who is greater than the greatest and him who is smaller than the smallest. The Vedic literature states that the supreme soul, super soul, is sitting within the heart of every living entity's body and is as big as a thumb. Therefore, the argument may be put forward. How can something the size of the thumb be accommodated within the heart of an ant? The answer is that this thumb measurement of the super soul is imagined in proportion to the body of the living entity. In no circumstance, therefore, can the super soul and the individual living entity be taken as one, although both of them enter within the material body of a living entity. The super soul lives within the heart to direct or control the individual living entity. Although both the Dhruva are eternal, the living entity is always under the direction of the Supreme.
It may be argued that because the living entities are born of the material nature, they are all equal and independent. In the Vedic literature, however, it is said that the Supreme Personality Godhead impregnates the material nature with the living entities and then they come out. Therefore, the appearance of the individual living entity is not factually due to material nature alone, just as a child produced by a woman is not her independent production. A woman is first impregnated by a man and then a child is produced. As such, the child produced by the woman is part and parcel of the man. Similarly, the living entities are apparently produced by the material nature, but not independently. It is due to the impregnation of the material nature by the Supreme Father that the living entities are present. Therefore, the argument that the individual living entities are not parts and parcels of Supreme cannot stand. For example, the different parts of body cannot be taken as equal to the whole. Rather, the whole body is the controller of the different limbs. Similarly, the parts and the parcel of the supreme whole are always dependent and are always controlled by the source of the parts and parcels. It is confirmed in Bhagavad-Gita that the living entities are parts and parcel of Krishna. Mamevansha, no sane man, therefore will accept the theory that the super soul and the individual soul are of the same category. They are equal in quality, but quantitatively, the super soul is always the supreme, and the individual soul is always subordinate to the super soul. That is the conclusion of the Vedas.
The significant word used in this connection is Yanmaya or Chinmaya. In Sanskrit grammar, the word Maya is Mayat is used in the sense of transformation and also in the sense of fullness. The Mayavadi philosophers interpret that the word Yanmaya or Chinmaya indicates that the living entity is always equal to the Supreme, but one has to consider whether this affix Mayat is used for fullness or for transformation. The living entity never possesses anything exactly in the same proportion as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, this Mayat affix cannot be used to mean that the individual living entity is quantitatively equal with the Lord. The individual living entity never has full knowledge, otherwise, how could he have come under the control of Maya or the material energy? The word fullness can be accepted, therefore, only in proportion to the magnitude of the living entity. The spiritual oneness of the Supreme Lord and the living entities is never to be accepted as homogeneity. Each and every living entity is individual. If homogeneous oneness is accepted, then by the liberation of one individual soul, all other individual souls would have been liberated immediately. But the fact is that every individual soul is differently enjoying and suffering in the material world.
As mentioned above, the word mayat is also used in the sense of transformation. Sometimes it is also used to mean byproduct. The impersonalist theory is that Brahman himself has accepted different types of bodies and that this is his Leela or pastime. There are, however, many hundreds and thousands of species of life in different standards of living conditions, such as human beings, demigods, animals, birds, beasts, and if all of them were plenary expansions of Supreme Personality, Supreme Absolute Truth, then there would be no question of liberation, because Brahman would already be liberated. Another interpretation put forward by the Mayavadis is that in every millennium, different types of bodies are manifest, and when the millennium is closed, all the different bodies or expansions of Brahman automatically become one, ending all different manifestations. Then, in the next millennium, according to this theory, Brahman again expands in different bodily forms. If we accept this theory, then Brahman becomes subject to change. But this cannot be accepted. From the Vedanta Sutra, we understand that Brahman is by nature joyful. He cannot therefore change himself into a body which is subject to so many painful conditions. Actually, the living entities are infinitesimal parts and parcel of Brahman, and as such, they are prone to be covered by the illusory energy. As explained before, the particles of Brahman are like sparks blissfully dancing within a fire, but there is a chance of their falling from the fire to smoke. Although smoke is another condition of fire. This material world is just like smoke, and the spiritual world is like a blazing fire. The innumerable living entities are prone to fall down to the material world from the spiritual world when influenced by the illusory energy. And it is also possible for the living entity to be liberated again, then when by cultivation of real knowledge he becomes completely freed from the contamination of the material world.
The theory of the share is that the living entities and are born of the theory of Suresh is that living the entities are born of material nature of Prakriti in touch with the pursuer. The theory also cannot be accepted because both the material nature, the supreme personality of Godhead, are eternally existing. Neither the material nature nor the supreme personality of Godhead can be born. The Supreme Lord is known as Aja or unborn. Similarly, the material nature is called Aja. Both these terms, Aja and Aja, mean unborn because both the material nature and the Supreme Lord are unborn. It is not possible that they can visit in the living entities, but it is accepted in the Vedic literature that as water in contact with aims sometimes present immovable bubbles so as a combination of the material nature and the supreme person cause the appearance of the living entities within this material world as bubbles in the water appear in different shapes. The living entities also appear in the material world in different shapes and conditions influenced by the modes of material nature. Therefore is not improper to conclude that the living entities appearing within his material world in different shapes, such as human beings, demigods, animals, birds, and beasts, all get their respective body to different desire. No one can say when such desire were awake in them, and therefore it is said, Anadi karma, the cause of such material existence unstageable. No one knows when material life began, but it is a fact that it does have a point of beginning because originally every living entity is a spiritual spark. As a spark falling onto the ground from a fire has a beginning, so a living entity is coming to this material world has a beginning, but no one can say when, even though during the time of dissolution all the conditioned living entities remain merged within the spiritual extension of the Lord, as if in deep sleep. Their original desires to lord it over the material nature do not subside again when there is cosmic manifestation. They come out to fulfill the same desire and therefore they appear in different species of life.
The living entities merged into the Supreme at the time of dissolution are compared to honey. In the honey comb, the taste of different flowers are conserved when one drinks honey, one cannot distinguish what sort of honey has been collected from what sort of flower. But the palatable taste of the honey presupposes that the honey is not homogeneous, but it is combination of different tastes. Another example is that although different rivers ultimately mix with the water of the sea, this does not mean that the individual identities of the rivers are thereby lost. Although the water of the Ganges and the water of the Yamuna mix with the water of the sea, the river Ganges and river Yamuna still continue to exist independently. The merging of different living entities into Brahman at the time of dissolution involves the dissolution of different types of bodies. But the living entities, along with their different tastes, remain individually submerged in Brahman until another manifestation of the material world. As the salty taste of sea water and the sweet taste of Ganges water are different, and this difference continuously exists. So, the difference between the Supreme Lord and the living entities continuously exists, even though at the time of dissolution they appear to merge, and
Right.
conclusion is therefore that even when the living entities become free from all contamination of material conditions and merge into the spiritual kingdom, their individual taste in relationship with the Supreme Lord continue to exist.
Yeah. The personified Vedas continued. Dear Lord, it is therefore our conclusion that all living entities are attracted by your material energy, and that only due to their mistakenly identifying themselves as products of the material nature are they migrating from one kind of body to another in forgetfulness of their eternal relationship with you. Because of ignorance, these living entities misidentify themselves in different species of life, and especially when elevated to the human form of life, they identify with a particular class of men, or a particular nation, or race, or so called religion, forgetting their real identity as eternal servants of your Lordship. Due to this faulty conception of life, they are undergoing repeated birth and death. Out of many millions of them, if one becomes intelligent enough by associating with pure devotees, he comes to the understanding of Krishna consciousness and comes out of the jurisdiction of the material misconception.
In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is confirmed by Lord Chaitanya that the living entities are wandering within this universe in different species of life, but that if one of them becomes intelligent enough by the mercy of the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, then he begins his devotional life in Krishna consciousness. It is said, Harim Vina Namritim Taranti. Without the help of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot get out of the clutches of repeated birth and death. In other words, only the Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, can relieve the conditioned souls from the cycle of repeated birth and death.
The personified Vedas continued. The influence of time, past, present, and future, and the material miseries such as excessive heat, excessive cold, birth, death, old age, and disease are all simply the movements of your eyebrows. Everything is working under your direction. It is said in the Bhagavad Gita that all material activity is going on under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. The Vedas continued, all the conditions of material existence are opposing elements for persons who are not surrendered unto you, but for those who are surrendered souls and are in full Krishna consciousness, these things cannot be a source of fear. When Lord Narasimha appeared, Prahlad Maharaja was never afraid of him, whereas his atheist father was immediately faced with death personified and was killed. Therefore, although Lord Narasimha appears as death for the atheist like Hiranyakasipu, he is always kind and is the reservoir of all pleasure for the devotees like Prahlada. A pure devotee is not therefore afraid of birth, death, old age, and disease.
I won't be reading. Sripad Sridhar Swami has composed a nice verse in this regard, the meaning of which is as follows. My dear Lord, I am a living entity perpetually disturbed by the condition of material existence. I have been cracked to pieces by the smashing wheel of material existence, and because my various sinful activities while existing in this material world, I am burning in the blazing fire of material reactions. Somehow or other, my dear Lord, I have come to take shelter under your lotus feet. Please accept me and give me protection. Srila Narottam Das Thakur also prays like this, my dear Lord, O son of Nanda Maharaj, associated with the daughter of Brisabhanu. I have come to take shelter under your lotus feet after suffering greatly in the material condition of life. And I pray that you please be merciful upon me. Please do not kick me away, for I have no other shelter than you.
The conclusion is that any process of self realization of God realization other than bhakti yoga or devotional service is extremely difficult. Taking shelter of devotional service to the Lord in full Krishna consciousness is therefore the only way to become free from the contamination of material conditioned life, especially in this age. Those who are not in Krishna consciousness, are simply wasting their time and they have no tangible proof of spiritual life.
It is said by Lord Ramchandra, I always give confidence and security to anyone who surrenders unto me and decides definitely that he is my eternal servant, for that is my natural inclination. Similarly, Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita, the influence of the material nature is insurmountable, but anyone who surrenders unto me can verily overcome the influence of material nature. The devotees are not at all interested in arguing with the non devotees to nullify their theories. Rather than wasting time, they always engage themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord in full Krishna consciousness.
The personified Vedants continue, Dear Lord, although great mystic yogis may have full control over the elephant of the mind and the hurricanes of the sense, unless they take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, they fall victim to the material influence and are never successful in their attempts at self realization. Such unguided persons are compared to merchants going to sea on a ship without a captain by one's personal attempts.
When you see a period, it means stop. You have to take a pause there. So Prabhupada can hear clearly each of the sentences, okay? All right, so by one's personal,
By one personal attempts, therefore, one cannot get free from the clutch of material nature. One has to accept bona fide spiritual master and work according to his direction. Then it is possible to cross over the nescience of material condition. Sripada Sridhara Swami has composed a nice verse in this connection, in which he say, "O all merciful spiritual master, representative of the supreme personality of Godhead, when my mind will be completely surrendered unto your lotus feet, at that time, only by your mercy, I shall will be able to get relief from all obstacle to spiritual life, and I shall be situated in blissful life."
Actually, static
you have to hold it to your mouth.
samadhi or absorption in the supreme personality of Godhead can be achieved. Oh, मेरी eyes are running. Can be achieved by consistent engagement in his service, and his consistent engagement in devotional service can be performed only when one weak works under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. The Vedas therefore instruct that in order to know the science of devotional service, one has to submit himself unto the bona fide spiritual master. The bona fide spiritual master is who knows the science of devotional service in disciplined succession. This disciplined succession is called Storias. The prime symptoms of one who has become a spiritual master is disciple, discipline, disciple succession, in that he is 100% fixed in bhakti yoga. Sometimes people neglect to accept a spiritual master, and instead they endeavor for self realization by mystic yoga practice, but there are many instances of failure even by great yogis like Vishwamitra. Arjuna said in the Bhagavad-Gita that controlling the mind is as impractical as stopping the blowing of an hurricane. Sometime the mind is compared to a midden elephant. Without following the direction of a spiritual master, one cannot control the mind and the senses. In other words, if one practices yoga mysticism and does not accept a bona fide spiritual master, he will surely fail. He will simply waste his valuable time.
Here, we'll pass it on because it's a long paragraph. You can pass the mic. It's a long, when we have a long paragraph, we split it in half.
The Vedic injunction is that no one can have full knowledge without being under the guidance of an acharya. Acharyavan Purusha Veda, one who has accepted an acharya knows what is what. The absolute truth cannot be understood by arguments. One who has attained the perfect Brahmanical stage naturally becomes renounced. He does not strive for material gain because by spiritual knowledge he has come to the conclusion that in this world there is no insufficiency. Everything is sufficiently provided by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A real Brahmana therefore does not endeavor for material perfection. Rather, he approaches a bona fide spiritual master to accept orders from him. A spiritual master's qualification is that he is Brahmanista, which means that he has given up all other activities and has dedicated his life to working only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. When a bona fide student approaches a bona fide spiritual master, he submissively prays to the spiritual master, "My dear Lord, kindly accept me as your student and train me in such a way that I will be able to give up all other processes of self realization and simply engage in Krishna consciousness devotional service."
Right. The devotee, engaged by the direction of the spiritual master in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, contemplates as follows: My dear Lord, you are the reservoir of pleasure. Since you are present, what is the use of the transient pleasure derived from society, friendship, and love? Persons unaware of the supreme reservoir of pleasure falsely engaged in deriving pleasure from sense gratification. But this is transient and illusory. In this connection, Vidyapati, a great Vaishnava devotee and poet, says, My dear Lord, undoubtedly there is some pleasure in the midst of society, friendship, and love, although it is materially conceived. But such pleasure cannot satisfy my heart, which is like a desert. In a desert, there is need of an ocean of water. But if only a drop of water is poured on the desert, what is the value of such water? Similarly, our material hearts are full of multi-desires which cannot be fulfilled by materialistic society, friendship, and love. When our hearts begin to derive pleasure from the supreme reservoir of pleasure, then we can be satisfied. That transcendental satisfaction is possible only in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness.
The personified Vedas continued, Dear Lord, you are Satchidananda Vigraha, the ever blissful form of knowledge, and because the living entities are parts and parcels of your personality, their natural state of existence is to be fully conscious of you. In this material world, anyone who has developed such Krishna consciousness is no longer interested in the materialistic way of life. A Krishna conscious being becomes uninterested in family life where there is some concessions for sense enjoyment. In other words, he is no longer interested in sense gratification. The perfection of human life is based on knowledge and renunciation, but it is very difficult to attain to reach the stage of knowledge and renunciation while in family life. Krishna conscious persons therefore take shelter of the association of devotees or sanctified places of pilgrimage. Such persons are aware of the relationship between the supersoul and the individual living entities, and they are never in the bodily concept of life because they always carry you in full consciousness within their hearts. They are so purified that they The any place they go becomes a holy place of pilgrimage, and the water which washes their feet is able to deliver many sinful persons loitering within this material world.
When Prahlad Maharaj was asked by his atheistic father to describe something very good which he had learned, he replied to his father, "For a materialistic person who is always full of anxieties due to being engaged in temporary and relative truths, the best course is to give up the blind well of family life and go to the forest to take shelter of the Supreme Lord. Those who are actually pure devotees are celebrated as Mahatmas or great sages. Personalities Personalities perfect in knowledge. They always think of the Supreme Lord and His lotus feet, and thus they automatically become liberated. Devotees who are always situated in that position become electrified by the inconceivable potencies of the Lord, and thus they themselves become the source of liberation for their followers and devotees. A Krishna conscious person is fully electrified spiritually, and therefore anyone who touches or takes shelter of such a pure devotee becomes similarly electrified with spiritual potencies. Such devotees are never puffed up with material opulences. Generally, the material opulences are good parentage, education, beauty, and riches. But although a devotee of the Lord may possess all four of these material opulences, he is never carried away by the pride of possessing such distinctions. Great devotees of the Lord travel all over the world from one place of pilgrimage to another, and on their way they meet many conditioned souls and deliver them by their association and distribution of transcendental knowledge. They generally reside in places like Vrindavana, Madura, Dwaraka, Jagannath Puri, and Navadipa because only devotees assemble in such places. In this way, they give saintly association to one another and thus advance so that every living entity can take advantage of the association of Krishna conscious persons. Such great devotees open temples and ashramas where Krishna's devotees assemble. By such association, people can develop more and more in Krishna consciousness. Such advancement is not possible in ordinary household life, which is devoid of Krishna consciousness.
The personified Vedas continue. Dear Lord, there are two classes of transcendentalists, the impersonalists and the personalists. The opinion of their impersonality is that this material manifestation is false and that only the absolute truth is factual. The view of the personalists, however, is that the material world, although very temporary, is nevertheless not false but factual. Such transcendentalists have different arguments to establish the validity of their philosophies. Factually, the material world is simultaneously both truth and untruth. It is true because everything is an expansion of the supreme absolute truth, and it is untruth because the existence of the material world is temporary, discreted, and it is annihilated. Because of its different conditions of existence, the cosmic manifestation has no fixed position. Those who advocate acceptance of this material world as false are generally known by the maximum Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. They put forward that argument that everything in the material world is preferred for matter, from matter. For examples, there are many things made of clay, such as earthen pots, dishes, and bowls. After their annihilation, these things may be transformed into many other material objects, but in all cases, their existence as clay continues. An earthen water jug, after being broken, may be transformed into a bowl or dish, but either as a dish, bowl, or water jug, the earth itself continues to exist. Therefore, the forms of a water jug, bowl, or dish are false, but their existence as earth is real. Haribol.
This is the impersonalist version. This cosmic manifestation is certainly produced from the absolute truth, but because its existence is temporary, it is false. The impersonalist understanding is that the absolute truth, which is always present, is the only truth. In the opinion of other transcendentalists, however, this material world being produced of the absolute truth is also truth. The impersonalists argue that this is fallacious because it is sometimes found that matter is produced from spirit soul and sometimes that spirit soul is produced from matter. Such philosophers push forward the argument that although cow dung is dead matter, sometimes it is found that scorpions come out of cow dung. Similarly, dead matter like nails and hair comes out of the living body. Therefore, things produced of a certain thing are not always of the same quality as that thing. On the strength of this argument, Mayavadi philosophers try to establish that although this cosmic manifestation is certainly an emanation from the absolute truth, the cosmic manifestation does not necessarily have truth in it. According to this view, the absolute truth, Brahman, should therefore be accepted as truth, whereas the cosmic manifestation, although a product of the absolute truth, cannot be taken as truth.
Thank you. The view of the Mayavadi philosophers, however, is stated in the Bhagavad-Gita to be the view of the Asuras or demons. The Lord says in the Bhagavad-Gita, Asatyam apratishtham te jagad ahur anishwaram aparaspar sambhutam kim anyat kamahaitukam. The Asuras' view of this cosmic manifestation is that the whole creation is false. The Asuras think that the mere interaction of matter is the source of the creation and that there is no controller or God. But actually, this is not the fact. From the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we understand that the five gross elements earth, water, fire, air, and sky, plus the subtle elements mind, intelligence, and false ego, are the 8 separated energies of the Supreme Lord. Beyond this inferior material energy is a superior spiritual energy known as the living entities. The living entities are accepted as the superior energy of the Lord. The whole cosmic manifestation is a combination of the inferior and superior energies, and the source of the energies is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has many different types of energies. This is confirmed in the Vedas. Parasya Shaktir Vividheva Shruyate. The transcendental energies of the Lord are variegated, and because such varieties of energies have emanated from the Supreme Lord, they cannot be false. The Lord is ever existing, and the energies are ever existing. Some of the energy is temporary, sometimes manifested and sometimes unmanifested. But this does not mean that it is false. The example may be given that when a person is angry, he does things which are different from his normal condition of life. But the fact that the mood of anger appears and disappears does not mean that the energy of anger is false. Therefore, the argument of the Mayavadi philosophers are that this world is false is not accepted by the Vaishnava philosophers.
The Lord himself must have finished.
The Lord Himself confirms that the view that there is no supreme cause of this material manifestation, that there is no God, and that everything is only the creation of interaction of matter is a view of the Asuras. The Mayavadi philosopher sometime put forward the argument of the snake and the rope. In the dark of evening, a curled up roll in some time due to ignorance take for a snake, but mistaking the rope of a snake does not mean that the rope of a snake is false, and therefore this example used by the Mayavadis to illustrate the falsity of the material world is not valid when a thing is taken as fact but actually has no existence as at all. It is called false, but it sometimes is mistaken for something else that exists. That does not mean it is false. The Vaishnava philosopher used a very appropriate example comparing this material world to an earthen pot. When we see an earthen pot, it does not at once disappear and turn into something else. It may be temporary, but the earthen pot is taken into use for bringing water, and we continue to see it an earthen pot. Therefore, although the earthen pot is temporary and different from and the original earth, we cannot say that is a false. We should therefore conclude that the earthen pot and the entire earth are both truth. Because one is the product of the others, we understand from the Bhagavad-Gita that after the dissolution of this cosmic manifestation, the material energy enter into the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is ever existing with His varied energy because the material creation is an emanation from Him. We cannot say that this cosmic manifestation is a product of something void. Krishna is not void. Whatever we speak of Krishna, whenever we speak of Krishna, He is present with His form, qualities, name, and term, and paraphernalia. Therefore, Krishna is not impersonal. The original cause of everything is neither void nor impersonal, but is the Supreme Person. Demons may say that is the material creation is Anishvara, without a controller of a god, but such argument ultimately cannot stand.
Haribol. So again, when we have a long paragraph, try to on your own go halfway. The example given by the Mayavadi philosophers that inanimate matter like nails and hair comes from the living body is not a very sound argument. Nails and hair are undoubtedly inanimate, but they come not from the animate living being, but from the inanimate material body. Similarly, the argument that the scorpion comes from cow dung, meaning that a living entity comes from matter, is also unsound. The scorpion, which comes out of the cow dung, is certainly a living entity. But the living entity does not come out of the cow dung. Only the living entity's material body, or the body of the scorpion, comes out of the cow dung. The sparks of the living entities, as we understand from the Bhagavad-Gita, are injected into material nature, and then they come out. The body of the living entity in different forms is supplied by material nature, but the living entity himself is supplied by the Supreme Lord. Father.
Yeah. The father and mother gives the body necessary for the living entity under certain conditions. The living entity transmigrates from one body to another according to his different desires, which in the subtle form of intelligence, mind and false ego accompany him from body to body. By superior arrangement, a living entity is put into the womb of a certain time of material body, and then he develops a similar body. Therefore, the spirit soul is not produced from matter. It takes on a particular type of body under superior arrangement. According to our present experience, this material world is a combination of matter and spirit. The spirit is moving the matter. The spirit, soul, living entity, and matter are different energies of the Supreme Lord. And since both the energies are products of the Supreme Eternal or Supreme Truth, they are factual, not false. Because the living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme, he exists eternally. Therefore, for him, there cannot be any questions of birth and death. So called birth and death occur because of the material body. The Vedic version, Sarvam Khalo Idam Brahma, means that since both the energies have emanated from the Supreme Brahman, everything we experience is non different from Brahman.
So, my dear devotees, that concludes our 1 hour of reading Krishna book to Srila Prabhupada. Everyone here, mark your place for next week. We'll continue the prayers by the personified Vedas next Sunday. And as we always do, let us offer our respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Namo Vishnavadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paskachadesha Charane. And to each other, Panchakalpadrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai Krishna Book Shri Gauda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna.